The sound came at exactly the same moment across Earth. It was not loud. It was not soft. It simply was. Like the feeling of falling in a dream. Like the last breath before going underwater. Like the silence after gunfire stops. Daejun was chopping wood outside his cabin when he heard it. The axe stopped mid-swing. His hands went still. The mountains of Gangwon province stretched out before him, covered in morning mist, but he saw none of it. He heard something that should not exist. A voice without words. A scream without sound. A call from somewhere far beyond the stars. He set down the axe carefully. His hands did not shake. They had not shaken in 5 years. Not since the day he crawled out from under the bodies of his team. Not since the day he stopped being a soldier and became something else. Something that survived. Across the world, Hana sat in the cockpit of a transport ship. She was running pre-flight checks, the same checks she had done 1,000 times. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. Then the sound came. Her hands stopped. The console lights blurred. For a moment, she was back in her fighter, watching her squadron die one by one, their ships exploding like flowers of fire against the dark. She blinked. The memory faded, but the sound remained. It was calling her. She did not know where. She did not know why, but she knew she had to go. In the underground fighting rings of Busan, Taemin stood over his opponent. The crowd roared. Money changed hands. The other fighter was unconscious, bleeding. Taemin had won again. He always won. Winning was easy when you felt nothing. When mercy was a word you had forgotten. Then he heard it. The sound cut through the crowd noise like a knife through silk. Taemin straightened. His eyes, usually dead and cold, flickered with something. Recognition, perhaps, or memory. He walked out of the ring without collecting his money. He did not look back. Yuna was 3 layers deep in an encrypted network when the sound reached her. She sat in a dark apartment, surrounded by screens showing code and data streams. She was hunting someone who sold weapons to terrorists. She was close. So close. The sound made her stop typing. Her reflection stared back at her from a dark monitor. She looked tired. She always looked tired. Fighting invisible wars left invisible scars. But the sound was not invisible. It was real. More real than anything she had felt in years. She shut down her system and stood up. Across the city, Hyun was washing blood from his hands. Another surgery finished. Another life saved. He worked in places where other doctors refused to go. War zones, disaster areas, places where death waited around every corner. He had seen more people die than most soldiers. He had also saved more lives than most could count. The sound came as he dried his hands. For a moment, he was back in the bombed hospital. Operating in the dark, feeling for arteries by touch alone, listening to people scream. The sound was different from those screams, but it carried the same weight, the same urgency. He grabbed his medical bag and left. In deep space, Nari sat alone on her salvage ship. She was examining a derelict vessel, cataloging what could be sold. This was her 4th ship. The first 3 had been destroyed. Each time, everyone else had died. Each time, she had survived. People whispered that she was cursed. That death followed her. They were right. But death never took her. It only took everyone around her. The sound echoed through her ship's empty corridors. Nari closed her eyes. She had heard silence before. The silence of dead ships. The silence of empty space. The silence of being alone. But this was different. This silence had a voice. She set course for the nearest transport hub without thinking. Her hands moved on autopilot. She knew what the sound meant, even if she could not explain it. 6 others heard the call across Earth. Minho, a demolitions expert who had defused bombs no one else would touch. Junho, who had rescued hostages from situations deemed impossible. Sora and Gina, twin pilots who flew missions together and never questioned the odds. Byung, a ship engineer who could fix anything, anywhere. Kira, a navigator who found paths through areas of space that sensors said were impassable. All 12 stopped what they were doing. All 12 began to travel. They did not call anyone. They did not explain. They simply moved toward the Galactic Council headquarters on Proxima Station. They knew they had to go. The knowing was deeper than thought. It was in their bones, in their blood, in the part of themselves that had survived when survival seemed impossible. The Galactic Council chamber was massive. Representatives from 100 worlds gathered there. The chamber could hold 10,000 beings. Today, it was nearly full. Everyone had heard about the signal. The old frequency. The precursor warning, but no one could hear the call itself. Not the Velaran warriors with their centuries of battle experience. Not the crystalline minds who could process thoughts at the speed of light. Not the Kelrath hive minds who shared consciousness across billions of individuals. Their machines detected the signal. Their computers could record it. But living beings heard nothing. Then, the humans arrived. 12 of them. They came separately, but within hours of each other. They did not know each other. They had never met. But they all asked the same question. Where do we go to answer the call? The council was confused. Earth was barely part of the galactic community. Humans were new, young, inexperienced. They had no great warriors, no legendary heroes. They were nobody. The council's secretary tried to turn them away politely. These 12 humans looked ordinary. One was covered in sawdust. One smelled like hospital disinfectant. One had bruised knuckles and blood on her shirt. They looked like survivors, not soldiers, but Daejun walked into the center of the chamber anyway. The council guards moved to stop him. He ignored them. He stood in the middle of the floor and opened his mouth. What came out was not human speech. The words were ancient. The language was precursor, dead for 10,000 years. The sounds should have been impossible for human vocal cords to make, but Daejun spoke them perfectly. His voice carried across the chamber, and every translator went silent. They could not process what they were hearing. When he finished, Hana stepped forward. She continued where Daejun had stopped, speaking words she had never learned, in a language she had never heard. But somehow, she knew every syllable. One by one, all 12 spoke. Each one continued the message. Each one spoke in perfect precursor dialect. Together, they delivered the complete warning. The silence had awakened. The weapon of extinction was active. In 6 months, it would erase all sentient life from existence. Not just kill them, erase them, as if they had never been. The council chamber fell into absolute quiet. The only sound was breathing. 12 humans stood in a circle, looking at each other for the first time. They did not smile. They did not speak. They simply understood. They had heard the call. And now, everyone knew why only they could answer it. The council did not believe them at first. How could they? 12 unknown humans claiming to hear a message that the galaxy's greatest minds could not perceive. It seemed impossible. It seemed like madness. But the precursor language was real. No human should know it. No database contained complete recordings. Yet these 12 spoke it fluently, finishing each other's sentences, knowing words that had been lost for millennia. The council's war master was called. His name was Kelroth. He was massive, standing twice the height of any human. His species lived for centuries and spent most of that time at war. He had fought in 600 battles. He had trained 10,000 warriors. Kelroth looked at the 12 humans with something close to contempt. They were small, fragile, young, Their species had only reached the stars 200 years ago. What could they possibly know of war, of sacrifice? "You claim to hear the precursor call," Kelroth said. His voice rumbled like thunder. "But the call is not just words. It is a test. Only those marked by death itself can truly answer. We will see if you are worthy." He led them to a chamber deep beneath the council headquarters. The room was empty except for 12 chairs arranged in a circle. Neural connectors hung above each chair like spider legs. "This is the trial of ending," Kelroth explained. "It is an ancient test. You will face your own death 1,000 times. Each death will feel real. The pain will be real. The fear will be real. Most warriors of most species can endure perhaps 50 deaths before their minds break. The greatest champions I have trained reached 200. He paused, studying the humans. "If you fail, you will wake up. This is not a simulation. This is psychic reality. Do you understand?" The 12 humans looked at each other. Dejun nodded. "We understand. Then begin." They sat in the chairs. The neural connectors lowered onto their heads. The world went dark. Kelroth stood outside the chamber, watching monitors that tracked their brain activity. His assistants gathered around him. They expected the humans to fail quickly. Humans were soft. They thought. Emotional. They would break. The first death was drowning. The second was fire. The third was the vacuum of space. On and on, the deaths continued. Burning, freezing, falling, crushing, poison, disease, violence. Each one perfectly rendered. Each one absolutely real to the mind experiencing it. At death 50, all 12 humans were still conscious. The assistants looked surprised. At death 100, all 12 remained stable. Kelroth leaned forward, interested now. At death 200, the assistants began to whisper. This was impossible. No species endured this long on their first attempt. Even Kelroth himself had only reached 170 on his first trial. At death 500, Kelroth noticed something strange. One of the humans, the woman named Hana, showed brain patterns indicating sleep. She was asleep. During the trial, while experiencing death after death, she had fallen asleep. At death 700, another human, the fighter named Taman, showed similar patterns. He was bored. The trial ran its full course. 1,000 deaths. All 12 humans experienced every single one, without breaking, without screaming, without begging to stop. When the neural connectors lifted, they opened their eyes calmly. They stood up. They showed no signs of trauma. No shaking hands. No 1,000-yard stares. They simply waited. Kelroth stared at them in silence. His assistants could not speak. This had never happened before. Never in the entire history of the trial had anyone endured all 1,000 deaths without breaking, let alone 12 individuals, let alone on their first attempt. How? Kelroth finally asked. His voice was quiet now, respectful. How did you endure? Taman shrugged. We've died before. Many times. Maybe not 1,000 times, but enough. You cannot die and live, one of Kelroth's assistants protested. Death is final. Hune, the doctor, shook his head. Death is not one moment. It is many moments. The moment you know you cannot win. The moment you know you cannot save them. The moment you understand that surviving means others did not. We have lived those moments. We carry them. Your trial just showed us what we already know. Nari added, we are not brave. We are not fearless. We are simply familiar with ending. When you know death personally, it holds no surprises. An archivist rushed into the chamber. She was old. Even by galactic standards, her species lived for thousands of years, and she had spent most of that time studying precursor history. She carried an ancient datapad. her hands shaking. "I found it," she said breathlessly. "I found why only humans can hear the call." Everyone turned to look at her. She activated the datapad, and holographic precursor text appeared in the air. "The precursors wrote about this," she explained. "About who could hear the final call. They said that only species who cultivate survival could answer. Most species avoid death. They build societies that protect their citizens from danger. They train warriors to win, not to survive. But humans are different." She looked at the 12. "Humans celebrate survivors. You give medals to people who lived through impossible situations. You study disasters to learn from those who survived them. You seek out individuals who have faced death and continued anyway. You do not avoid death. You make peace with it. And that creates a psychic frequency, identical to the precursor's final message." Kelroth processed this information. "So they are not the strongest warriors. They are the ones who refuse to stay dead." "Exactly," the archivist said. "The precursors knew that stopping the silence would require individuals who understood emptiness, who had experienced meaninglessness and created meaning anyway. Only humans select for this trait." The council convened an emergency session. The 12 humans stood in the center while thousands of representatives debated. Many argued that humans were too inexperienced, too young as a species, too unpredictable. But the facts were undeniable. No other species had sent anyone who could hear the call. The trial proved the humans could endure what others could not. And time was running out. The silence was growing stronger every day. Finally, the council reached a decision. They would send the 12 humans. They would give them a precursor ship called the Requiem, recovered from an ancient battlefield. They would provide coordinates to the Andromeda sector where the silence was located, but they would send no support, no fleet, no backup, because no one else could survive the silence's influence. The humans would go alone. As the council prepared the ship, Daejun gathered the others. They stood together for the first time as a group. 12 strangers who shared something deeper than friendship. They had all survived what should have killed them. They had all heard the call. And they had all answered without hesitation. "We don't know each other," Daejun said quietly. "We might not survive this. Probably won't. But we're here because we're the only ones who can be." Hana nodded. "I've been the last survivor 4 times. My whole squadron died while I lived. If I die this time, at least it will be with others who understand." Minho, the demolitions expert, spoke up. "I've defused 63 bombs. Every time, I knew it might be my last moment. Every time, I did it anyway. This is just another bomb. Bigger, maybe. But the same choice. One by one, they shared their stories. Not of glory. Not of victory. But of survival. Of continuing. When stopping would be easier. Of choosing to live even when living meant carrying the weight of those who did not." Yuna, the cyber warfare specialist, was the youngest. She listened to the others and finally spoke. "I lost my entire hometown to a digital attack. I couldn't save them, but I learned how to stop it from happening to others. I didn't survive for glory. I survived because someone had to." The Requiem was ready. The ship was ancient but functional. It had been built by the precursors specifically for those who heard the call. Inside, everything was designed for survival. Not comfort, no luxury, no waste, just what was needed. The 12 boarded. The council watched them go with a mixture of hope and doubt. Could 12 humans really stop something that threatened the entire galaxy? It seemed impossible, but as Kelroth watched the Requiem lift off, he remembered something his own teacher had once told him. The greatest warriors are not those who never fall. They are those who fall and rise anyway. The ship disappeared into the stars. The 12 humans were alone now, alone with each other, alone with the call, and alone with the certainty that they were heading toward something that had destroyed countless others before them. But they did not turn back. They never even considered it. Because they had heard the call. And they had answered without pause. The journey to the Andromeda sector would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks in a ship designed by a dead civilization. 3 weeks with 11 strangers. 3 weeks to prepare for something no one fully understood. The first few days were quiet. Everyone found their space on the ship. The Requiem was large enough that they did not have to interact constantly, but small enough that they could not hide from each other. Daejun spent most of his time in the observation deck, watching the stars slide past. He had lived alone in the mountains for 5 years. Silence was comfortable for him. But this silence was different. It was shared. On the 3rd day, Hana joined him. She said nothing at first, just stood beside him, watching the same stars. Finally, she spoke. "How many were in your team?" she asked. Daejun did not look at her. 12, including me. What happened? Ambush. We walked into a trap. They hit us from all sides. I went down first. Got hit in the chest. Went down hard. By the time I could move again, everyone else was dead. He paused. They fell on top of me. Their bodies covered me. The enemy thought I was dead too. I stayed under them for 16 hours. Didn't move. Barely breathed. Just listened to them walk around. Checking bodies. Hana was quiet for a long moment. My squadron was 30 fighters. We went up against an enemy fleet. The mission was classified as acceptable losses. 50% casualty rate expected. We knew going in that half of us would die. She closed her eyes. But it wasn't half. It was everyone. Everyone except me. My fighter got hit early. Lost navigation. Lost targeting. Lost communications. I flew blind through a debris field for 3 days. When I finally made it back, I learned I was the only one who survived. Did they call you a hero? Daejun asked. Yes. I hated it. Heroes save people. I just lived while everyone else died. They stood together in silence after that. But it was a comfortable silence. The silence of people who understood. Over the following days, the others began to share their stories too. Not formally. Not as a group exercise. Just naturally, as they worked together, ate together, existed together, in the ship's confined space. Taemin told Junho about why he started fighting. His sister needed an expensive medical treatment. Insurance would not cover it. The government would not help. So he went to the underground rings where they paid cash for blood. He won fight after fight. No rules. No mercy. He broke bones. He caused permanent damage. He did whatever it took. His sister lived. But he kept fighting. Because by then, feeling nothing was easier than feeling guilty. Junho understood. He had been a hostage negotiator before joining rescue teams. He talked people down from ledges, from rooftops, from desperate situations. He succeeded most of the time. But not always. The ones who jumped haunted him more than the ones he saved. So he switched to rescue work. Going into buildings that might collapse. Into fires that might spread. Into situations where he might die. Because if he was risking himself, at least he was not asking others to trust him. Yuna and Nari became unlikely friends. Yuna fought digital wars. Nari fought the emptiness of space. But both fought alone. Yuna explained how she hunted terrorists through networks, how she dismantled organizations by herself because she trusted no one else, how she had learned that the only reliable person was yourself. Nari laughed bitterly at that. I trusted my crew. Every time. 3 ships. 3 different crews. All dead. The first time was an equipment failure. The second was an asteroid strike. The third was a reactor breach. Every time, I lived. I started to think, maybe I was the problem. Maybe death followed me. But I kept taking crews anyway. And they kept dying. So why are you here? Yuna asked. Because maybe this time, I'm not the only one who survives. The ship's AI began to act strangely on day 10. It started forgetting commands. Not malfunctioning. Forgetting. As if it could not remember what it was supposed to do. Byung, the engineer, worked on it constantly, but he found nothing wrong with the hardware. We're getting close, he told the others. The silence is already affecting the ship. It's making the AI forget its purpose. Hyun, the doctor, examined everyone daily. He found nothing wrong physically. But he noticed something else. They were all becoming calmer. Not scared calm or forced calm, just genuinely peaceful. As if they had accepted what was coming. We're not afraid, he observed one evening when they gathered for a meal. We should be terrified. We're flying toward something that erased entire civilizations. But no one is panicking. We know, Minho swallowed his food and shrugged. I've sat in rooms with active bombs 63 times. You know what I learned? Fear doesn't help. Either it explodes, or it doesn't. Being afraid changes nothing. So I stopped being afraid. I just do the work. Sora and Gina, the twin pilots, nodded. They had flown together their entire careers. They finished each other's sentences. They thought in sync. We've been in situations where we had seconds to live, Sora said. We learned to make peace fast, Gina continued. Peace with dying. Peace with trying anyway. On day 15, they entered the Andromeda sector. Immediately, the ship's systems began failing faster. Not all at once, but steadily. Lights flickered. Gravity fluctuated. The AI became more confused. But the 12 humans remained unaffected. They felt nothing different. No headaches. No dizziness. No confusion. The silence that was destroying the ship's systems passed through them like water through a net. Kira, the navigator, was the first to understand why. The silence doesn't erase life. It erases meaning. It makes things forget why they exist. The AI is forgetting its purpose. The ship systems are forgetting their functions. But we've all lived through meaninglessness. We've all had moments where we forgot why we were alive. And we found reasons. Anyway, the silence has nothing to take from us. They pushed deeper into the sector. And then, they found the graveyard. Hundreds of ships floated in orbit around a massive structure. Ships from every known species, military vessels, exploration craft, colony ships, all intact, all perfectly preserved, but all empty. Daejun piloted the Requiem carefully between them. They scanned the nearest ship. It was Velaran, a warship with a crew of 10,000. The logs showed they had arrived 6 months ago. Full crew, full supplies, full weapons, but now there was no one aboard. Not bodies, not skeletons. Just nothing. As if the crew had never existed. The ship remembered carrying people. The life support systems were still running. The sleeping quarters still had personal items. But the ship itself seemed confused about why it had these things. Hyun found a captain's log on one of the ships. The last entry was chilling. We forgot why we fight. It happened slowly. First, we forgot our mission. Then we forgot our orders. Then we forgot why we became warriors. Finally, we forgot why we lived at all. I am recording this while I still remember that recording has purpose. But I can feel it slipping. Soon I will forget why words matter. Why thought matters. Why I matter. The log ended there. No final entry. No goodbye. Just silence. They found similar logs on other ships. All the same pattern. Crews slowly forgetting their purpose. Their identity. Their existence. And then, simply ceasing to be. Not dead. Erased. The structure at the center of the graveyard was enormous. It was built into a collapsed star. A black hole. The readings were impossible. Space itself was twisted around it. Time moved differently near it. And from its core, the silence emanated like radiation. That's where we need to go, Daejun said. Everyone knew he was right. The call was coming from there. The answer was there. Whatever stopped, the silence, would be found in that structure. But they also knew the odds. Every other species had failed. Thousands of warriors, millions of crew members, all gone, all erased. And they were just 12 humans. They gathered in the common room that night. They knew it might be their last night. Tomorrow they would attempt what no one else had survived. We should decide now, Daejun said. To reach the core, someone will need to pilot the ship through the corona. The radiation levels will be lethal. It's a suicide run. We'll need volunteers. They looked at each other. No one spoke. Then, slowly, every single hand went up. All 12. Daejun smiled for the first time since they had met. Hana laughed. It was a tired sound. We all heard the call. That means we were all chosen. All 12 of us. We're not here to survive. We're here to answer. They spent the rest of the night talking. Not about the mission, not about death, but about life. About the things they had lived for. The people they had saved. The moments that mattered. And when morning came, they were ready. Ready to descend into the structure. Ready to face the silence. Ready to find whatever answer waited in the dark. The Requiem approached the structure slowly. The silence grew stronger with every meter. The ship's systems failed one by one. But the 12 humans remained clear. Focused. Calm. They had survived the unsurvivable before. And they would survive it again. Or they would not. Either way, they would answer the call. Because that was what they did. That was who they were. The ones who heard death calling and walked toward it anyway. The structure had no entrance. Not at first. They circled it for hours, scanning, searching. The surface was smooth. Perfect. Like glass made from collapsed space-time itself. Nothing should have been able to build something like this. Yet the precursors had. Then, Daejun noticed something. The surface was not reflecting light. It was absorbing it. Absorbing everything. Energy, matter, information. And where it absorbed, tiny doorways appeared for milliseconds before closing again. It's reactive, Yuna said, studying the readings. It opens to those who approach with purpose. But only for a moment. Then we go in fast, Taemin said. They split into teams. It was not a discussion. Everyone simply knew their role. Like they had trained together for years. Like they had always been meant to work as one. Daejun, Taemin, and Junho would be the breach team. They would fight to the core. Yuna, Hyun, and Minho would handle technical systems and keep the path open. Hana, Nari, Sora, and Gina would pilot and provide support. Byung and Kira would stay on the Requiem to maintain the ship and manual override failing systems. They equipped themselves. Weapons that felt wrong to hold. Precursor technology that should not work for humans. But it did. Because they had heard the call. Because the precursors had built this, knowing that one day, someone would answer. The breach team approached first. The surface rippled. A doorway appeared. They went through without hesitation. The moment they passed inside, the door sealed behind them. The rest watched from the ship. There was no turning back now. Inside was darkness. Not the darkness of space, not the absence of light. This was the darkness of nothing, of void, of emptiness given form. Daejun activated his light. It pushed back the dark maybe 3 meters. Beyond that, nothing. They walked forward. The floor was solid, but they could not see it. Each step was an act of faith. Behind them, the darkness closed in. Always 3 meters away. Always pressing. Then the silence attacked. It did not come with violence. It came with forgetting. Taemin felt it first. He could not remember why he was walking. What was he doing here? Where was here? He stopped. His mind went blank, but his body remembered. His feet kept moving. His hands kept holding the weapon, because Taemin had trained his body to fight even when his mind shut down. In the ring, thinking got you killed. Instinct kept you alive. Junho grabbed his shoulder. Stay with us. Don't think, just move. They pressed forward. The technical team had entered through a different door. They found themselves in a vast chamber filled with machinery. Precursor technology that still functioned after 10,000 years. Consoles that glowed with information. Systems that controlled the structure. Yuna sat at a console. The interface was alien, but somehow she understood it. Her fingers moved across symbols she had never seen, typing code in a language she did not know. But her hands knew. Just like Daejun had spoken precursor words, just like all of them had abilities they should not possess, the silence hit her next. She forgot what code was, forgot what computers were, forgot why typing mattered. But her hands kept moving, because she had typed for so many years that her muscle memory was stronger than her conscious mind. Minho worked on the structure's defensive systems. They were active, keeping the silence contained. But barely. He needed to disable certain nodes to allow the breach team through. Each node was protected by complex locks. Precursor engineering that would take years to understand. But Minho did not need to understand. He just needed to find the right way to break it. And breaking things was what he did best. He placed charges with practiced precision, not thinking about it, just doing it. Then the silence took his memories. He stood there holding an explosive. He could not remember what it was for, could not remember why he held it, could not remember his own name. But he remembered the feeling. The feeling of being in a room with a bomb, knowing you might die, choosing to try anyway. That feeling was deeper than memory. It was carved into his soul. He placed the charge and moved to the next node. The pilot team had the hardest job. They needed to keep the Requiem stable while flying through the collapsed star's corona. The radiation was intense. The gravitational forces impossible. The ship was dying around them. Hana sat in the pilot seat. Sora and Gina handled navigation and weapons. Nari managed systems. The ship screamed warnings. Hull integrity failing. Power dropping. Life support critical. Then the silence reached them. Sora forgot why she was flying. Gina forgot what a ship was. Hana felt her purpose drain away. What was she doing? Why was she here? But her hands stayed on the controls. Because she had flown while blind before, while damaged, while dying. She did not need to remember why. She just needed to keep the ship steady. Nari's console went dark. System after system failed. But she kept rerouting, kept compensating. Because she had kept dead ships running before, had kept herself alive on vessels that should have been tombs. This was just another dying ship. And she refused to let it die yet. Deep inside the structure, the breach team reached the first barrier. It was a wall of pure energy. Touching it meant erasure. Not death. Erasure. Ceasing to have ever existed. Junho studied it. The silence was stronger here. He forgot his name, forgot his past, forgot everything, except one thing. There were people on the other side who needed help. That was what he did. That was what he had always done. Help people who needed it. He found a pattern in the energy, a rhythm. And between the pulses, there were gaps, milliseconds of safety. He dove through. Daejun and Taemin followed. They made it. Barely. They ran through corridors that shifted, walls that moved, floors that changed. The structure was alive in some way, aware, testing them. Each step forward was a battle not against enemies, but against themselves. Against forgetting, against giving up, against simply ceasing to be. Yuna disabled the final defensive node. The moment she did, the silence surged. It hit her full force. She forgot everything. Who she was, where she was, why existence mattered. She sat at the console, staring at nothing, her mind completely blank. Hyun found her there. He tried to bring her back, calling her name, shaking her. But she was gone. Not dead. Just empty. He wanted to stay, to keep trying. But the mission needed him. He left her there. It was the hardest thing he had ever done, leaving someone behind. But he had learned in the field hospitals that sometimes you cannot save everyone. Sometimes you choose who to save. And the galaxy needed them to reach the core more than it needed him to stay. Minho planted the last charge. The explosion would clear the path for the breach team. He set the timer. But as he did, the silence took him too. He stood there, holding the detonator. Forgot what it did. Forgot why he held it. His last conscious thought was simple. Whatever this device does, it should be activated. His thumb pressed the button. The explosion rocked the structure. The path opened. But Minho stood in the blast zone. Not running. Not moving. Just standing. The explosion took him. But he had finished his job first. The breach team ran through the opening. They were close now. They could feel it. The core was ahead. The source of the silence. The thing they had come to stop. But they heard screaming through the comms. The pilot team was in trouble. The ship was breaking apart. Sora and Gina were gone. Not dead. Erased. One moment, they were there. The next, they had never existed. The ship did not remember carrying them. The team did not remember their names. They were simply gone. Hana's voice came through. Strained. Desperate. I'm losing it. The ship is dying. I can't hold much longer. Fall back. Daejun ordered. Get to safety. No, Hana said. Not yet. You're not at the core yet. I'll hold. Nari tried to help. Tried to keep systems running. But she was injured. Bleeding. The ship had torn apart around her. She rerouted power. Redirected what was left. Gave everything to keep the ship stable for a few more minutes. The breach team reached the final chamber. It was massive. At its center floated a crystalline structure. Beautiful. Terrible. Inside it, the silence was contained. Pure emptiness. Pure nothing. Compressed into a single point. Precursor text covered the walls. Daejun read it. Understanding came like a flood. The silence was not a weapon. It was an escape. The precursors had lived too long. Suffered too much. Lost too many. They built the silence to erase their pain. To forget they had ever suffered. But it grew beyond control. It began erasing everything. All meaning. All purpose. All existence. The precursors tried to contain it. Built this structure to hold it. But it required someone to maintain the container. Someone to hold the silence back forever. Someone to stand at the edge of oblivion and refuse to fall. The precursors failed. One by one, they forgot why they were holding it. Forgot their purpose. And when the last one fell, the silence began to spread again. To stop it, someone had to take their place. One person, holding back infinite emptiness. Forever. Never dying. Never living. Just existing as the barrier between the silence and the universe. Daejun, Taemin, and Junho looked at each other. They all understood. One of them had to stay. One of them had to become the container. The prisoner. The sacrifice. All three stepped forward at once. Then Hana's voice came through the comm. Quiet. Calm. Certain. I'm coming to you. Daejun activated his comm. Nari can fly you out, Hana said. Her voice was steady. Not shaking. Just certain. I've set the autopilot. She's injured, but she can manage. I'm coming to the core, Hana. I've already left the ship. Don't argue. I'll be there in 3 minutes. Junho looked at Daejun. We should stop her. But Daejun shook his head slowly. We can't. She's made her choice. They waited. The three of them standing before the crystalline prison. The silence pulsed inside it. Hungry. Patient. Waiting for whoever would come next. Waiting to consume them. Waiting to be held back by another soul willing to sacrifice everything. Hana arrived. Her flight suit was torn. Burned. Half of it was gone. She had burns across her arms and face. She had flown through the corona to reach them. Through radiation that should have killed her. But she was still moving, still walking, still focused. She looked at the three men, then at the crystal, then back at them. She smiled. It was a sad smile, a tired smile. But real. I know what you're thinking, she said. You want to stop me. Tell me there are other ways. Tell me I don't have to do this. There might be another solution. Taemin started. There isn't, Hana interrupted gently. We all know there isn't. The precursor text is clear. One person. One consciousness. Holding back the silence forever. And it has to be someone who understands emptiness. Someone who has lived through meaninglessness and found meaning anyway. She walked toward the crystal. I've been the last survivor 4 times. 4 times I watched everyone around me die while I lived. Do you know what that does to you? It makes you question why. Why them and not me? What makes me special? What makes me worthy of survival? She turned to face them. I never found an answer. I just kept going, kept flying, kept living. Even when living hurt. Even when surviving felt like punishment. I learned something important. Meaning is not something the universe gives you. It is something you create. Even in emptiness. Daejun stepped forward. Let me do it instead. I've lived alone for 5 years. I know. Isolation. No, Hana said firmly. You survived by holding on to something. By keeping going. The silence will take that from you. It will erase what you hold on to. But I survived by learning to let go. Every time my squadron died, I had to let go. Let go of guilt. Let go of answers. Let go of why. The silence wants us to forget meaning, but I already know how to exist without it. Junho spoke. You're asking us to leave you here. Forever. Do you understand what forever means? You won't die. You won't sleep. You'll just stand here, holding back infinite emptiness for eternity. I know, Hana said. But someone has to. And I'm the only one here who has practice at being the last one standing. She walked to the crystal barrier, placed her hand on it. The surface rippled. It recognized her. Recognized the frequency in her soul. The frequency of someone who had survived the unsurvivable. Who had made peace with loss. Who understood emptiness intimately. Tell them, Hana said, looking back one last time. Tell them that humans don't hear the call, because we're the deadliest. Tell them we hear it, because we're the ones who answer. Always, no matter the cost. She stepped through the barrier. The crystal parted like water. Inside, the silence rushed toward her. All of it. Thousands of years of accumulated emptiness. All the forgotten meanings, all the erased purposes, all the lost reasons for existing. It slammed into her. Her body went rigid. Her eyes went blank. For a moment, she was nothing. Empty. Erased. But then she took a breath. Her lips moved. The others could not hear her through the crystal, but they could read her lips. I remember. The silence screamed. A soundless scream. It tried to erase her, tried to make her forget why she existed. Tried to strip away every memory, every purpose, every reason she had for being. But Hana had done this before. She had forgotten meaning before, and rebuilt it. Again and again. Every time her squadron died, every time she survived alone, she had learned to create purpose from nothing. to find reason in randomness, to choose meaning even when the universe offered none. The silence could not take what she willingly released. It could not erase what she had already learned to rebuild, over and over, infinitely. The crystal sealed around her. She stood frozen. A statue. A monument. A barrier between existence and nothing. Her eyes were open, but saw nothing. Her body stood, but felt nothing. She was aware, but experiencing only the silence. And yet she stood. She held. She refused to fall. The structure stabilized. The spreading stopped. The silence was contained again. Held back by one human who understood emptiness better than anyone, who had learned to exist in the space between life and death, who had survived being the last one standing so many times that standing forever was just another day. Daejun, Taemin, and Junho stood watching. They wanted to break the crystal, to pull her out, but they knew they could not. This was her choice, her sacrifice, her answer to the call. "We need to go," Daejun finally said. His voice was rough. Before the structure collapses the path, they ran. Back through the corridors. Past the places where Yuna and Minho had fallen. Past the barriers they had crossed. The structure was changing now, sealing itself, becoming a tomb, a prison, a sanctuary. They reached the Requiem. Nari was in the pilot seat, pale, bleeding, but alive. She had kept the ship together, barely. It was falling apart, systems failing, hull breached in a dozen places. "Everyone on board?" she asked. "Everyone who's coming," Junho said quietly. Nari did not ask for details. She just flew, pulled the dying ship away from the structure, away from the collapsed star, away from the graveyard of forgotten ships. Behind them, the structure sealed completely, becoming smooth again, perfect, impenetrable. And inside, Hana stood alone, forever, holding back the infinite, refusing to forget, choosing to remember, again and again, for all time. The Requiem limped back to Council space. It took twice as long as the journey out. The ship barely functioned. They had to route power manually, navigate without computers, fly on instinct and hope. 7 of them remained. 7 out of 12. Daejun, Taemin, Junho, Hyun, Nari, Byung, and Kira. 5 were gone. Yuna, Minho, Sora, Gina, and Hana, lost to the silence, lost to the mission, lost to the answer they had come to give. When they arrived, a fleet met them. Ships from every species, thousands of vessels. The silence had stopped spreading. Sensors confirmed containment. The threat was over. Billions of lives saved. Trillions of futures preserved. The Council wanted to honor them. Give them medals, titles, positions of power. Make them heroes across the galaxy. The 7 stood before the Council chambers, battered, exhausted, hollow. Daejun spoke for all of them. "We didn't come for rewards. We didn't come for glory. We came because we heard the call. That's all. Some of us answered with our presence. Others answered with their lives. But we all answered. What can we give you?" the Council asked. "You saved the galaxy. Name any reward. Let us go home," Nari said simply. "That's all we want. To go home." The Council granted the request. The 7 returned to Earth. They did not speak of what happened, did not write reports, did not give interviews. They simply went back to their lives. Daejun returned to his mountain cabin, chopping wood, watching seasons change. But sometimes he looked at the stars and thought of Hana, standing alone, holding back infinity, still choosing to exist, still refusing to forget. Nari returned to salvage work, taking new crews, flying dangerous routes. But she no longer feared being the last survivor. because she knew that surviving meant something. It meant you could answer when called. Taman returned to the fighting rings. But he fought differently now. Not without mercy. Not without feeling. He fought with purpose, because he had learned that even pain could have meaning if you chose to give it meaning. The others scattered across Earth, living quiet lives, carrying their memories, carrying the weight of those who did not return. But not as a burden, as a reminder that when the universe calls for those who can answer impossible questions, humans step forward. Not because they are the strongest, not because they are fearless, but because they have survived the unsurvivable, because they have found meaning in emptiness, because they have made peace with their own mortality, and so when death calls, they answer. When the impossible beckons, they respond. When the galaxy needs someone to stand at the edge of oblivion and refuse to fall, humans volunteer, because that is what they do. That is who they are, the ones who heard the call, the ones who answered without pause. In the Andromeda sector, in a structure built into a collapsed star, in a crystal prison holding back infinite emptiness, Hana stands. She has stood for a century now by galactic time. She will stand for 1,000 centuries more. Forever. The silence screams through her every moment, trying to make her forget, trying to erase her purpose, trying to convince her that existence has no meaning. And every moment, she answers with the same thought, the same choice, the same defiant act of will. I remember, I choose this. Again and again. Infinitely, forever. Because she is human, and humans answer the call. Always.